If there's anything we've learned from the 2016 election, it's that we are a nation divided. For the second time in 16 years, the candidate who won the presidency did not win the popular vote. The national exit polls show a sharp division in votes among many demographics: gender, age, education, income, race. But now both candidates and the current president are delivering a unified message.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. We have to get together.
Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
We are now all rooting for his success in uniting and leading the country.
Is it even possible after the election cycle we've just lived through? Joining me to weigh in are Jennifer Braceras, editor at NewBostonPost.com. Nice to see you.
You too.
And former CNN White House correspondent Dan Lothian. Dan, it's great to see you
Good
again,
to be
too.
here.
Is it possible? Is it doable? I know the rhetoric is all the right thing, but is this really doable after this kind of thing?
Of course it is. Our country has been through so much worse, right? I mean, we are at a time of relative peace. And we're not in the middle of a civil war. This isn't the election of 1800. It didn't go to the House. Senators aren't caning each other on the floor of the Senate, right? I mean, we've been through worse in our country, and we've come through just fine.
You think the average Trump voter, the average voter, is ready to hear a message of reconciliation after the rancor of this campaign? Maybe down the line. Are they ready now for that?
The average Trump voter,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because the average Trump voter just always wanted to be taken seriously.
Do you think America, both sides are ready for this reconciliation?
Well, I think there will be the extreme part of the party that probably isn't so ready to reach across the other side of the aisle and say, hey, let's be friends. There's a reason why there is this anger. And there's a big chunk of America that isn't what we would think of the stereotypical Donald Trump supporter. And for them, I think it's going to be very easy, or at least it's going to be doable. But for those who are on the fringe, on the far corners of the party, I think it's going to take a little bit more time.
Well, how about on the other end of the spectrum, the Clinton? We had a woman call the radio show today, one of the most incredible calls ever. She identified herself as a black Muslim immigrant woman physician. And she talked about the pain and fear she is feeling this morning when she woke up. And it was not some wild 3 minutes on the radio, but talk about how she feared for herself, for her family. How is the gap bridged after the rhetoric of this campaign, not just from Trump himself, but from at least, let's say, a swath of his supporters? How is that healed? How is that fixed? What does he do?
Well, because as the President of the United States said today, the sun will rise each and every day, and that woman will get up every day, and she'll realize as time goes on that nothing's changing.
So Trump doesn't have to
life.
do something to reach out, I don't mean that woman individually, but to that generic woman, to the Muslim 11-year-old who's worried, to the Mexican kid who's worried that his parents are going to be deported?
I wasn't happy about the rhetoric in this campaign, especially coming from Donald Trump. But I do think you will see a softer, kinder Donald Trump as we move forward towards the presidency. I hope that we will.
It is on him. He's the one that's got to do this, yes?
And it can't be just a softer, kinder president. It has to be someone who, routinely, every week, if you will, or maybe every month, coming out and talking about this. It can't be just a one-off speech that's going to cause people to feel comfortable. So he has to talk about it often, and then people will be watching his actions. But there is real concern. I was down in Florida working on a story specifically talking to Muslim Americans, and there was this concern that the rhetoric, okay, maybe it's not Donald Trump himself that scared them, but some of his supporters, really the tone that was out there, they're very, very scared.
Okay, so wait. He sets the right, let's assume he sets the right tone. Right. Give it to him. He's going to be a calmer, gentler, whatever he's going to be. And then in his first 100 days, he says some variation on the ban on Muslims coming in the country. And I promised you the wall, even though Paul Ryan doesn't like it, I'm going to give you the wall. Doesn't that undercut whatever words he says? I mean, it was the action, the proposals that caused the breach.
Look, well, I don't know about that. I mean, the wall itself isn't such a controversial idea. Every single
Paul Ryan doesn't like it.
Okay, he doesn't like it, but he doesn't like it because he doesn't think it's practical, because he thinks that most illegal immigrants come via airplane, and because it's a waste of money, and because of a lot of other things. But there wasn't a Republican candidate on that stage, and many Democrats who don't think we need tighter immigration policy and better border security. It might have taken a different form. Jeb Bush, right, he wanted to put more emphasis on border patrol. But every single person on that stage wanted a revised immigration policy, and so do the American people.
Does he have to revise his substantive positions to be able to make that outreach, or?
Well, I think he does. I mean, there are a lot of things, when you cover a lot of campaigns, you know this, there are a lot of things that are said to win voters over. But when it comes to governing, you have to change the tone. And we saw that happen over every election cycle, where a lot of crazy things are said. But when you get there and you realize, wait a minute, this is how it's actually done, you have to change your tone. But I think we will be able to judge this, not just, we can't look at it and say, oh, a month from now he says something, odd and everyone gets worked up. You really have to see what kind of trend is developing here.
I actually don't think it's the policies that are that controversial. It's the tone that upset me, and I think that upset most people in this country.
Exactly.
The policies, when you really drill down on them, are, in a lot of issues, quite moderate and where the country is.
Can we revisit something we talked about with Emily and Marjorie Egan earlier in the show? Particularly, this is the life from which, well, you spent your whole life doing this. Are your former colleagues, I don't mean at CNN, in the profession, do they get how they missed this story? Do they get how there was this sort of arrogant, at least in my opinion, this arrogant elite notion, we know best, we know those people? I mean, the whole deal, they missed everything, it seems to me.
They really did, and it's great to see, some of my former colleagues and others getting up and saying, you know what, we failed, we made a mistake. But I think
Jake Tapper last night, I should say, did that pretty
exactly, and many others have as well.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason for it, it's not necessarily because reporters are elite, but you look at, when you're covering campaigns, you look at trends. You look at what happened in this campaign, what happened over this period of time, in the past, and you use that to help guide some of the things that might be happening in this one. But I will, I said all along that this was the one campaign where I thought the polls would be completely off. All those polls. And the reason is because no one really wanted to be honest with who they were supporting. And so if people aren't telling you the truth, how can those numbers be real?
But every one of those pollsters, when I asked, including here, said there's no hidden Trump vote. We captured all that.
Well, clearly there were a lot of people who were supporting him, and they came out in big numbers. And I think, it's a wake-up call for reporters. There was one person today, I was listening to them, and they said, look, we made a mistake. I should have listened. It wasn't as if no one was saying these things. We just didn't really pay attention.
Well, that's one. Do you think they're going to get religion, or the pundits? I hate the word. I don't know why I'm using it. Is the punditry and the pollsters, are they going to learn something from this?
Maybe temporarily, but this is the ghost of Pauline Kael. I mean, this happened in the McGovern Nixon race, right? It's the apocryphal story. Who knows if she really said it?
It's a great story.
But Pauline Kael, who was, I believe, an art critic for the New Yorker, said after Nixon won against McGovern, how could he have possibly won? I don't know a single person who voted for him.
That was great.
And that is true of not just the current press, but the intelligentsia in this country generally. The professors, the elite class in this country, they don't know people who voted for Donald Trump. And they won't know those people 4 years from now.
So will they be chastened? There were a bunch. I saw them last night, too, admitting, and I don't think they had a choice, how wrong they were, how much they missed. Right. Will they be chastened? Will they change their ways? Will they change their method of operation? No? Yes?
I hope so. I mean, this is, if you can't have a bigger wake-up call than this, right? Everybody got it wrong. I think people were preparing, probably had their scripts written already for what was going to happen. And so you certainly, if you're not, then there's something wrong with you, because this isn't a case where maybe these numbers were off or these predictions or insights were wrong. Just the whole thing was a total flop and they collapsed. And I certainly hope that it.
By the way, while she didn't like it, she actually got it right. Jennifer, nice to see you.
You got it right,
Dan,
too.
it's great to see you.
Great to see you.
Thanks
always.
so much. See you again soon.